Hi, everyone. This is chapter 11 and our first chapter about middle childhood. So, think about what age group are we referring to? Well, school age children, right? So, about 6 or 7 to about 11 or 12. Now, what is going on during this time? Well, we have to look at their physical growth, right? Well, the vocabulary word here is secular trend. Those are changes from generation to generation. So, what we're finding is there's a secular trend in the way that we're taller and heavier and at a faster rate of development. Part of that is due to improved health and nutrition, but part of that is also due to food choices and options, right? We're seeing obesity at an all time high. But in impoverished areas, areas of extreme poverty, third world nations, we're not seeing a change because nothing has changed in the environment to then really make that big change in physical growth. Okay? Now, if we look at childhood growth worldwide, we see that the shortest children are found in parts of South America, Asia, parts of Africa, and the tallest children are found in Australia, Northern and Central Europe, Canada, and the US. Now, why? Well, they find in terms of nature, we've many times adapted generation after generation, that secular trend, to the climate and to the environment that we're living in. Nurture wise, how much food do you have access to? What is your medical options? All of that will also play into the physical size of children. So, brain development in middle childhood, we find that the brain weight is increasing. At this point, it's increasing by about 10%. White matter is rising steadily. It helps with comprehension and problem solving. And gray matter peaks and then starts to decline as a result of synaptic pruning, which again is why we need to positively stimulate young minds. But we do need some synaptic pruning because it leads to more effective processing in our brain. But we find that neurotransmitters and hormones might affect how we're functioning at this age. One specific hormone is androgens. It's a male sex hormone, but that's actually produced in both sexes and promotes this kind of social dominance, behavior, play fighting, higher activity. So I have a video on Blackboard and it actually talks about the benefits of rough and tumble play. It's not aggressive. Children can continue interacting even, after they had their hands on each other because it's not an aggressive situation. It resembles other young mammal social behaviors. So sometimes I'll watch my two young dogs and they're just kind of making loud noises and kind of biting at each other, but not to hurt each other. It's a game, it's a way to act out their energy. So we want to encourage this with children. They learn about their boundaries and they learn a lot about themselves through rough and tumble play. Okay, so let's highlight some health problems in middle childhood, from vision to bedwetting, illnesses, injuries, motor development, nutrition, and obesity. So, in terms of vision and hearing, myopia is the most common vision problem in middle childhood, and that is nearsightedness. You're able to see near, you have difficulty seeing far. Now, why do you think that's been occurring more in this generation? Well, they're utilizing that nearsightedness to look, um, at things very close, like a cell phone, whereas they're not strengthening their abilities to see far. We have a lot of middle ear infections, a lot of tubes that are put in children's ears. That's kind of a common thing at this age or at a younger age. So, regular screenings are really important to make sure that children's academics or behavior are not being affected by their vision and their hearing capability. Bedwetting actually occurs in 1 out of 10 children, typically affects more boys than girls, usually has biological roots where you see it kind of occurring in families. Can be treated with medication, but most effective is a urine alarm where the parent kind of sets an alarm or helps the child set an alarm where they can get up and use the bathroom, and make sure to have a good healthy routine of going before they go to bed and all of that. Now, illnesses, again, as we start entering school, we're exposed to more sick children. So their immune system is still developing, but some children have chronic diseases like asthma or more severe illnesses, sickle cell, cystic fibrosis, diabetes, which we're going to talk about. And typically that only affects about 2% of young children. So, how do we help? Again, there's a lot of different avenues from school to health education to medical options, home visits, support groups, even summer camps for children who can go be around other children who are experiencing what they're experiencing. They've found to be pretty successful. Now, what about unintentional injuries? They find motor vehicle accidents involving children, as pedestrians or passengers, or bicycle accidents are the most common. So, we again need to be talking about safe practices, modeling, rehearsing. Again, wear helmets, try not to be so high risk. So, really being aware of who our children are and what they need. So we've talked about motor development every age. Now children are able to be more flexible and use balance, but they're still utilizing those fine motor skills when it comes to writing and drawing. So here's some changes, increased speed, precision in jumping, more effective batting. Writing, again, can mastery of both uppercase and lowercase, more legible, ability to copy shapes and again, more realistic drawings. Here are some, again, I wish as an adult I could draw like these children, but as you can see, they're very realistic. They can start to incorporate depth. So, now what about education and being active, right? Well, children are spending less time being active, and a lot of that is less time for PE in school, maybe even less consistent recess or less participation in sports. So, physical activity supports children's self worth and also helps them get along with others, which then helps their academic in going to school. So, half of children in the US have no PE, and fewer than a third engage in moderate to intense activity. So, again, a lot of that has to do with encouragement and insistence from the teachers and the parents on both the school end and the home end. So school recess is no longer mandated for 80% of US school districts, and fewer than half mandate 20 minutes per day. And again, you think about how many breaks you need, children need even more. So it boosts classroom learning. They're more active in recess typically than even in PE class, and it fosters not only their physical health, but their cognitive health and their social emotional competence. So sports, again, half of children are engaged in sports. I know in COVID times it became more difficult, but again, it helps with self-esteem, social skills, but we have to be careful of overemphasis on competition or adult control or criticism or ostracizing due to lack of abilities. So, nutrition, what might be the cause of poor nutrition at this age? Again, they're in school, so they're seeing other children's food choices, maybe few fruits and vegetables, and too many fried foods and soft drinks. But again, children even will report that they feel better after they eat healthy food. So, what we find is that malnutrition can start to play into other areas. And next chapter, we'll look at things like ADHD and how that plays a role. Okay, let's talk about diabetes. So, diabetes, there's type 1 and type 2. Type 1 is often diagnosed at a young age, but it could be, older. Has nothing to do with body weight, and it's due to ketone levels. So, they have lack of ability to produce insulin, and they have to take insulin or they will die. Type 2 diabetes is typically associated with body weight or being obese, higher blood pressure, cholesterol levels. Sometimes it's treated with medication, sometimes not. But typically, with weight loss, you're able to many times no longer be considered diabetic, whereas type 1, that is not the case. So, type 1, again, has nothing to do with their lifestyle. It's not preventable. It's not something that this person did to themselves. It is something that's going to affect them for life. So, here are some symptoms. Again, it kind of comes out of nowhere. Typically, again, you could see it in young babies, but it could be even young children. Weight loss is a big sign of that. So, again, things to look out for. So I've shared some of these on our website on Blackboard, the trailer and the news story, but there's also websites here about Luke and his diabetic alert dog Jedi. So I really recommend looking into these. Um, the documentary is about type 1, and again, there's not many documentaries out there teaching us about the effects of type 1. So look into Luke. His mom and I worked together years ago, and I've been following his story. So please, I encourage you to do the same. So now that we've distinguished that obesity has nothing to do with type 1 diabetes, it does have something to do with type 2, right? So, what ends up putting you in these different categories? Well, healthy weight is around the 50th percentile. Overweight, it can be up to the 85th percentile, and obese is considered the 95th percentile and above. Um, we also have underweight, which would be considerate of overweight on the other side, and then malnourished. So obese is 20% over one's healthy weight. So what we find is about 18% of US children are obese. That came from the year 2002. Why? Well, again, we'll get to that. But what we're seeing in China is they have a 5-time increase compared to 25 years ago. And then we're seeing these issues in adults occurring in childhood, like asthma, high blood pressure, cholesterol, type 2 diabetes, right? So, what are the causes? It could be overweight parents who are overfeeding, lack of exercise. I've seen in my own family and friend circle where children really gained a lot of weight during COVID times, where it was lack of exercise and a lot more time spent being sedentary. So, when we look at 18 industrialized nations, the US is top in terms of overweight adults. Over 60, about 70% of adults are considered overweight. How'd that happen? Well, again, it soared in the 80s when we started to have more options in terms of fast food, supersizing, busy lives, again, not being able to have time to cook at home and picking up something easy, and declining physical activity. So we can kind of see the secular trend if we're comparing from 1985 to the year 2000. Look how drastically it changed in terms of being overweight and obese. And again, what are these consequences? These children are stereotyped, they're treated unfairly. So we need to do treatment not only at the family base, but at school and kind of hit it from both areas and intervene or hopefully prevent before it even occurs. All right. Thank you guys for following along in this chapter and email me with any questions.